Want to know our secret formula for creating a better life? If so, stick around, but first, take a quick moment and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell for notifications. This video has been funded by Tether, an easier way to ensure your loved ones are safe. With superior tracking techniques and technology like never before, Tether takes being safe to a whole new level.
Our framework is based on the work of several favorite psychologists and personal development coaches. One of the most notable is Albert Ellis, the pioneer of cognitive behavioral therapy. Ellis's ABCDE model of emotional disturbance includes A, activating event or adversity. An activating event or adversity is something that triggers you to form an irrational belief, such as being turned down for the position you wanted. So B is an irrational belief, a belief you have which isn't really grounded in fact. C is emotional and behavioral consequences, consequences that flow from the irrational belief. And then D stands for disputes or arguments. E stands for new effect. In 1954, Ellis began teaching this new technique to other therapists, and by 1957, he had formally set forth the first cognitive behavioral therapy by proposing that therapists help people adjust their thinking as the treatment for emotional and behavioral problems. Albert Ellis's ABC model is a significant part of the form of therapy he developed, which is also known as rational emotive behavior therapy. It's been around for quite a while now. Rational emotive behavior therapy served as a sort of precursor to the widely known and applied cognitive behavioral therapy, and the ABC model is still commonly used as a treatment in CBT interventions.
Now that you know the foundation for which a lot of coaching models have stemmed, we came up with our own. And it was based on our own life experience, our training as life coaches, and also our work in the mid-singles community with those who have loved and lost either through divorce, difficult breakups, or even a widowhood. Those losses can lead to a lot of distorted thinking, and it can very easily impact our ability to live life to its fullest. Our secret formula to creating a better life is this thought work approach. We call it our FSIBO model, and the letters are FSIBO, and I'll tell you what those stand for. It is important to be able to separate the facts of our lives from the stories we tell about those facts. It is a fact to say that you are divorced if you are. It is a story to suggest that your life is ruined as a result of that fact. Stories are not facts, but interpretations of those facts. Understanding that our thoughts about the facts are just stories helps us choose stories that are more supportive.
You know, Cathy, I think a good example of that, well, is Albert Ellis's irrational thoughts that are part of his ABC model. And I think we're talking about stories, which is our interpretations. Cognitive distortions is a problem that results from that kind of irrational thinking or storytelling. Back when we were dating, we had a fact arise that Cathy canceled a breakfast we had planned. What did I make it mean? I thought she was rejecting me. Was that true, or did I just infer it? It was a story, not a fact. But what feelings arose from that story? Well, it was painful. I felt rejected. Is there another possible story? Actually, that same evening, Cathy and I had spent 5 hours together, and I had met her children for the first time. Does that sound like rejection, or is it a step forward? Now, when I began to think of that evening as a step forward, guess what? I felt better.
Yeah, definitely. So our irrational beliefs will cause emotions, and so will the more empowering stories we might choose to replace them with.
Right. Our emotions flow from our stories. One of the most common stories for divorced people is some version of "my life is ruined." That is a very heavy story to carry around. It feels a little like what's the point now? When we think those thoughts, all we want to do is lay down and give up. These stories make us feel like nothing we do matters, and the last several years we were married do not count as part of our life.
Adopting an alternative story, for example. In my past relationship, I had an opportunity to love deeply, to make mistakes and to learn from my partner's mistakes as well, which has prepared me to love more deeply and intentionally in future relationships, particularly in the relationship with my future spouse. That interpretation is hopeful and forward-looking and supplies a much lighter and happier and more supportive emotion. So there's 2 E's in the FSIBO model. Emotion and energy can be interchangeable because our thoughts or our stories about the facts of our lives result not only in emotion, but energy in motion, which is emotion, right? So emotion and energy, they're interchangeable. Both of them are greatly impacted by the stories that we tell. And quite frankly, you can also go the reverse way, that our energy and our emotions can affect the kind of thinking that we have.
Absolutely.
So when we're hangry, when we're tired, we're less likely to be thinking clearly. And at those times, we can do things about those symptoms of energy and emotional drain. And once we eat, once we have a good night's sleep, we're more able to tell ourselves the empowering stories that support us better.
Right. We can also be affected by trauma from past events intruding on the present.
Something I realized recently, Jeff, is that when we came up with these words and we were very intentional about the words we chose, the middle is C, S-E-E. And really a huge part of this model is being aware.
Right.
Seeing the thoughts that we have for what they are as just thoughts, as just stories. We can choose to keep them. We might choose to keep them. Even if they make us miserable, we might choose to keep them if that is in line with our belief system, if it's in line with our moral values or whatever. Sometimes the thought that we're sad when someone dies, we want to keep that because that means we loved them. You know, there's reasons why we might keep thoughts or stories that don't necessarily make us happy, but they're sincere and they're in harmony with who we are and who we want to be.
Right. We can also be affected by trauma from past events intruding on the present. And so part of this work is to release that trauma. And that kind of trauma could come from a past relationship or may even go further back to childhood. And that begins by working through our stories and determining how those stories are running us. It may mean letting go of stories that have justified but not served us.
After our relationship ends, some people are able to shift their energy to be better prepared for a new partner. Others are able to divorce the negative energy in the marriage rather than divorcing each other and thus create a new marriage. It kind of doesn't matter which is which. The key is doing our own work so that we can have a better relationship.
Right.
With thoughts and stories that support connection.
Right.
And goodness.
Right. I mean, and really this framework focuses on stories. And we have to exercise our agency, our free will to deliberately adopt stories that are more supportive. And that will have consequences with our emotions and our energy.
And after that, it has consequences on our behaviors.
Behavior is the B in FSIBO.
And the B is often what we focus on in January.
Right.
When it's a new year and we want to set resolutions. And there's nothing wrong with resolutions, but usually we only go back in that FSIBO model to our behavior. And we try to change our behavior, and how long does that last?
Until we fail in one of our resolutions.
I think it's often that people are saying they're giving up by February or March.
Right.
And I think that a large part of it, it's not because we don't have enough willpower, it's not because we don't care, it's because we're not going to the root of the problem, which is the stories we're telling. If we're not shifting those stories and our emotions and our energy are dragged down by those stories that we might be telling about the facts of our life and we think that they're just true, then the behavior we really want isn't supported.
Right. You know, Cathy, if I were, I think the most common New Year's resolution has something to do with weight loss. Let's suppose I have a New Year's resolution related to getting in shape, and I really want to lose some weight, to expand my lungs more, just to be in overall better physical condition. If I am carrying around a story that says, oh, I can't lose weight no matter what I do, I never lose any weight, how long am I going to be able to stick with the resolve to get in shape?
Or if you're staying with the story that I'm doing these things only to lose weight, then the resolve goes away when those pounds don't come off fast enough.
Right. Whereas if we're looking at the positive results that we're having, the mood lift and other things, well, then we may be able to embrace those things that we are doing and the progress that we are making without being dragged down by this idea that, oh, nothing helps.
Yeah. And a good coach, and this is what we do with our clients a lot, is they're able to pick out what the client is saying and be able to point out what stories might not be serving them and offer new thoughts that they might want to consider. Now, of course, it's always up to us what we think and what we do. It's just really great when we have the opportunity to be introduced to something different.
Right.
Because it ultimately impacts the energy we have, the emotions we feel, and the behaviors that naturally stem from all of that.
Our behavior naturally flows from the energy and emotions that we are carrying around. And of course, the energy and emotions we carry naturally flow from the decisions we make about the stories we tell regarding the facts of our lives. The outcome we experience in life is naturally created by our own behaviors, which can be traced back to our thoughts. If we don't like something in our life, it can be a mirror and a reflection for us to consider what thoughts we can shift to create a whole new flow in our life.
So of course the O, it stands for outcomes. And that's the end of our FSIBO model, but that's not anywhere near the end of the work that we each have to do throughout our lives on being able to be more intentional about what's happening in that flow.
Right, and just because we corrected one negative story we may be telling ourselves doesn't mean that when we're working through other problems, we don't have to go right back to the beginning of the framework and work through each of those steps.
And then sometimes it takes us a while to shift to the new thought.
Absolutely.
Because we get in patterns with our thoughts.
Right.
And our stories.
You can't talk your way out of something you behaved your way into. Stephen R. Covey tells a story about meeting with a man at a conference where he was a keynote speaker. And this gentleman came up to him after his speech was concluded and said, "Stephen, I am going crazy. Every time I come to any sort of business meeting or conference, my wife is calling me 5, 6, 8 times a day. She's asking me what I'm doing and who I'm meeting with and who I've seen. And she doesn't trust me even a little bit." Well, the funny thing about this is, he says, toward the end of his conversation with Dr. Covey, I guess I can't totally blame her, because we met at one of these conferences when I was married to someone else. So no matter what he said to his wife, Dr. Covey couldn't give him any words that were going to restore trust in his wife, because she met him under circumstances where he was being fundamentally untrustworthy. And so you can't talk your way out of a problem you behaved your way into. That's an important thing to remember about outcomes, is we've sown the seeds for these outcomes way before with behavior, which comes before outcomes. The behavior was he cheated on his wife and met someone else and got a divorce. The outcome was his new wife, ironically, didn't trust him.
That actually makes sense. And he's questioning why that might be. And a little self-reflection, a little bit of seeing that see, that awareness could help in that situation.
Right. He's going to have to do a lot of behaving to counteract the behavior from before.
And reassuring.
Sure.
Yeah, because when it comes to relationships, we all need a little reassurance and maybe a lot of reassurance depending on the situation.
Right. You cannot truly behave your way out of a problem if your mindset remains the same, because the thought precedes the act.
Event plus response equals outcome. That's a simplified way of putting the FSIBO model that we were talking about. The FSIBO model just expands on that and makes it a little bit more useful in everyday life, so we can pay attention to not only the stories we're telling, but the energy and emotion that we're creating. The most important part of the secret is that it only applies to ourselves, not to our husbands, not to our girlfriends or our kids or our neighbors. The only person in charge of your brain and your thoughts and your stories is you.
After you watch this video, you have a general idea of what our secret success formula is, the quick and dirty version. Please apply it all you can on your own. But if you need a little help, just know that our coaching doors are open and we can support you in the process of being more intentional with your mind, your energy, and your emotions.
And know that we do this work ourselves. So we are very committed to and passionate about this work.
It is important to remember that adopting new and more supportive stories and to question the stories we're already embracing. It is important to affirmatively act rather than passively being acted upon by our fears and our feelings.
One of the best gifts we can give ourselves and those around us are empowering thoughts that one may never have considered. That's the beauty of coaching. We get to help our clients try on new thoughts or stories that maybe they couldn't have possibly even thought of or imagined on their own.
We're going to have some really interesting and helpful courses coming up. And to get notice of those, go to loveinlateryears.com and subscribe to our weekly Lily letter. Gives you lots of uplifting content in addition to reminding you about the other things we have available,
including our weekly videos, our weekly podcasts, and our weekly shorts. We are busy producing great free material all the time, just for you. In fact, our last 3 episodes on our podcast, LilyPod, episode 101, 102, and 103 expands on the FSIBO model. So if you want to dive deeper into this and you want some free material, check out LilyPod on your favorite podcast app. 101 talks about facts versus stories and separating them out, and we dive deep into that. 102 talks about emotion and energetic state, what creates it. And 103 is behaviors and outcomes, how to shift them. If you enjoyed this video and you are intrigued by the opportunity to really take life intentionally and purposefully and create what you want, then you'll love those podcasts and you can dive in deeper with us.
And remember that any time is a great time for more love in your life. Thank you so much for watching.